Yeah,
So
and I grew up, yeah, and I grew up in a society, Doug, where there are no values, no virtues, no morality. Everyone is interested in money and sex, and that those are the only two drivers on the seat there. And I think Western people have lost that capability. They should become elitist. In fact, that is my thinking. I think politics should become elitist as well. It should be like China or Singapore, where only meritocratic people are capable and allowed to rise up in positions of power. So I do not give any value to non-meritocratic, unskilled people and stupid people.
all right, we're joined by our friend Jayant Bhandari to talk about the H1B kerfuffle that came up, showed a real divide in MAGA over the last couple weeks, and kind of explore these issues further. So, no one better to talk to about this, I think, than Jayant. Jayant, thanks for taking the time to join us. I appreciate it.
Well, thanks very much, Matt, for having me today.
So, you were you following that whole thing that happened on Twitter? Were you following this H1B?
Yeah, I've been following it, and this was something which was begging to happen. If you recall, a similar thing happened in Canada when people started revolting against Tim Horton, and now something similar is happening in the U.S. People had grown tired of the arrogance that Indians have shown in the US and the kind of language they use on social media. And a time had to come when people would come out with in anger against the behavior of Indians. And a lot of that behavior they could see as coming from the so-called caste system of India. This is what Vivek wrote in his tweet as well, in which he basically looked down on the blue collar worker of America, and he tried to compare India with the US. Now that's absolutely crazy, and I completely agree that US has gone downhill, but US continues to be in cannot be you cannot compare the two countries. The US continues to be 1,000 times or 1,000,000 times better than India. So Vivek lives in his own world, and I'm very happy. In a way, it's a good thing that's happening.
A good thing that's happening. Well, it's certainly exposing what's going on. And just to recap for people who didn't see it, essentially, Trump nominated a guy named Srinam Kishnan to an AI advisor post. And out of that, somehow it evolved, I guess, into an H-1B visa debate. And that really set people off because this is a hot button for cert for the tech, our tech betters, especially. And you had Elon coming out and saying things that were pretty harsh around the whole topic. He said, for instance, that the people who are posting against the continuing to bring in lots of H-1B workers, he said that they were contemptible fools that must be removed from the Republican Party. And that was only the beginning of the escalation. He went further. It got to a point where he said, fuck yourself in the face. I will go to war on this issue, the likes of which you cannot possibly comprehend. That didn't work. That didn't go over well, to say the least. So there was the debate. I assumed, I've had H-1B workers for me when I ran a larger publishing company, that worked in the tech part of our business, but I didn't understand how big the program was, how many people were involved, and actually the types of jobs that you can get for it. So people were digging up, going into the H-1B database, the public database, and pulling out all the different jobs. They had people working at 7-Eleven for $24,000 a year. They had entry-level graphics designer positions. There were thousands at Tesla alone, and a lot of them were entry level. So as all this came to light, it only added fuel to the fire. And then Trump finally comes out and says, no, we need more of this type of legal immigration. And so I think we're at like a standstill. Like, it's people don't know how to handle it going forward. But I guess I'd like your take on the program, the H-1B program. I mean, there were 386,000 people in 2023 that came in through this program. 72% of them were from India. So the focus of the debate online really has been around Indians. And what's your take on the program and the trade-offs? And do the people who are really advocating that it must be stopped? Do they have it? Does their argument have any merit?
So clearly, Matt, I can absolutely guarantee you that India does not produce that 200,000 H1B people that Elon Musk and Vivek might claim are the smartest people on the planet. They are India. 200 India simply does not produce that many intelligent people. Now I can fully understand that there are something like 5, 10, or 20,000 very good engineers who come from India, but they would have come to the US irrespective of whether you have H1B system or you did not have that system. Intelligent people always find a way to uh, end up at the best place. So, but moreover, the reputation of Indians in the software industry is not the one that is uh, advertised in the media. Indian software engineers are mostly into cut and paste jobs, and most of this work is not done properly despite that they are cut and paste jobs, which means that the software code once written has to be rewritten whenever they want to change any software. So it becomes an expensive exercise for these companies. But because everyone is looking at short-term profits and not for long-term investments, they continue to hire these low-paid Indian software engineers who do in a large part crappy job. And Matt, I often ask myself, why have all these airline accidents happening in the recent past? Is it because the software has been compromised? And Matt, the interesting thing is, and this is what I have seen, that in any complex system, if you do many micro compromises, those micro compromises multiply. So if you have a machine with 10,000 or 20,000 parts, if even a few cogs are not working properly, the whole machine will break down. And unfortunately, quality is not a concept that Indians have a very good hold on. They do whatever they can get away with. That is the psychology of the people. So unfortunately, that reflects in the software as well.
Hmm. Why did these companies keep hiring these people then? I mean, if you'd think that if it really does, they'd have to notice over time what you suggested, which is that their costs actually go up because they have to redo things or things don't work right. Why does the demand for these H1B visa workers continue to grow?
Um, Well, firstly, a lot of Indians like to bring in Indians, irrespective of whether they are cheap or not, and this is not because they prefer to have Indians. They want to have Indians because they know how to exploit Indians better. So they are not trying to help Indians, they just know better how to exploit Indians. So a lot of Indian managers want to bring in Indian people to work under them, and in big companies, in Microsoft or Google, these people get very well paid. But then there are a lot of small companies, something similar to Infosys or Tata Consulting, and there are many small companies that supply you very low grade software people who might not have done any education really. They might have done a few months of a course on producing writing code, and then they using those body shop companies in the US, they end up coming to the US at a very cheap rate.
There were people talking online, or people saying that, like, white programmers, you'd see people explaining that they have a degree, they can't get a job, they can't even get an interview in any of these companies today. And their claim was that it was the hiring managers were Indian. And so you're saying
Absolutely.
the bias against the non-Indian workers is just simply because they know how to better exploit the Indians?
Absolutely. That's the only reason. So many people think that this is the affinity for Indians that they have. No, they don't have affinity for Indians. Indians are very atomized people. They don't like each other. They fight with each other all the time. They tease each other. They are mean to each other. So the only reason the Indian managers want to hire Indians is because they know how to exploit their juniors better. And that is the only reason they have a preference for Indians.
Hmm. How does the caste system in India relate to this? Are all the people that are brought, are they in this, are they in the same caste? I mean, is Vivek in the same caste that these IT workers are brought in? How does it?
So the caste system, Matt, is completely misunderstood in the West. It is now misunderstood everywhere in the world, including in India. And the problem is that the British tried to give a structure of a caste system to a country that had really 1.4 billion castes, I would say. So, they're not just three or four or five castes in the country. There are literally thousands and tens of thousands of castes, and everyone thinks he's superior to the people in the other caste. And within their caste, they each person is fighting for who is superior to the other person. So Indians have this ingrained pecking order mentality. They try to size you up when they meet you. They want to know how much you earn, what kind of power you have. So this, yes, indeed. So the caste system is not just about the classification, it is about sizing the other person up.
Hmm. Doug, you were going to ask a question here a moment ago, and I jumped in quick.
No, it's it doesn't go deeper than this ancient caste system. Where does this come from, Jayant? Is it from the Hindu religion, or is it a racial thing, or what is it? Why is India different that way than most other countries?
Well, if I have to choose between the two, I will call it a racial thing. It is indeed a racial thing, and religion is downstream to race. It is the biological instincts, it's the IQ of people, which add up together to form your religion and the culture. Now, your religion and culture can change its expression if the IQ and the race of people changes. So, for example, if you look at Christianity in sub-Saharan Africa or in India or in many parts of Latin America, what you see is not Christianity but voodoo. So, religion changes its expression because of the kind of people who are using that religion. So, at the end of the day, here is the issue with Indians. Indians are amoral people, Doug. They are incapable of differentiating between right and wrong. Now, Doug, as you know, I know a lot of crooked people in the Western society. I have worked in the junior mining industry. The issue is that at least the people who are doing wrong that know that they are doing wrong, and there is a limit to which they will lie to me. Whereas Indians will lie to you blatantly without any remorse at all. They have no concept of guilt and no concept of shame. They are amoral people, and they have no concept of virtues either. And this has been a problem. This has been an issue. I wouldn't call it a problem because it is what it is. It has been an issue with the country for the last forever. India was never a civilization, and the British tried to civilize these people. And as you can see, they did not really succeed much in that. Christian missionary put in a huge amount of effort in India to change the culture of people, and they did, they did manage a lot of good things, like they stopped the sati practice, which might still continue today, but only in isolated cases. They controlled a lot of problems of that country, but they could not really change the amoral nature of Indians. They could not trigger moral consciousness in Indians, and that is where the problem comes from, and that is the seed of all the problems. That is the foundations of all the problems that you see with India.
You know, it's funny. I've known Robert Friedland for many years, and he spent time in India, actually with Steve Jobs of all people. And one of his favorite anecdotes that he likes to tell about India is one time he visited a spice dealer, or somebody that was selling things that had different spices on them. And Robert says that he asked the Indian guy who was selling these things, do you have any cool spices here? And the seller says, oh yes, sir. Our spices are so cool. They will soothe you. They are like butter when they go down your throat. And he says, well, that's great, but I really want hot spices. And the guy says immediately, referring to the same thing, says, no, it is a very hot spice. It will burn you. It will scald you. And Robert tells that joke because it's exactly the same thing the guy's talking about. And he feels that the words will actually change the nature of the item that he was selling.
Yeah,
And that's why he tells
Doug,
that joke. And I know you haven't talked to Robert about this, or at least not when I heard that anecdote. So it's not just you saying this.
well, and it goes further than that, Doug. You look on at social media, and Indians talk about how India has become the world's third biggest economy and a superpower. Now, there's nothing that matches that statement when you actually see India. India is a shithole. Nothing works in that country. It's dysfunctional, and you can buy everyone, absolutely everyone in that country. So if you were a Chinese or a Pakistani, and if you wanted to get any military secrets in that country, I can absolutely guarantee you that's available for money. So this is a true shithole. And they talk about Indians really believe that talking is everything, that by talking things, by believing that India is a developed country or the third biggest economy, India automatically becomes the third biggest economy.
I'm not gainsaying what you said, but let me challenge a couple of these things, because people will ask themselves, well, what about Tata Motors, which is a very large Indian country and makes cars? I don't know if they are successful in exporting them, but the corporation is big and wealthy. That's one thing. And the Indian space program, which has launched rockets of their own design, I think, and I think they've actually landed on the moon. Are these total anomalies, or just the very best Indians get together in some of these places, or what's the story?
Well, what about the space program of North Korea? North Korea develops good rockets. They have nuclear weapons. It's a country with a population of less than that of New Delhi. So a small country these days can produce nuclear weapons and have a space program. The only thing is that other countries outside China and the US do not think it is worth their while to spend billions of dollars on something that US and China would do anyway for humanity. So why should a poor country be spending money on a space program? Now, it is a lot of money, but on per capita basis, it's hardly any money. It's a few $1 billion for a country of $1.5 billion. If you steal a dollar from every Indian, you have $1.5 billion to run a space program. Now, so this is nothing really big. This is a small amount of money, which and the real issue is that when close to 30 to 40% of Indians poop in the open, why should India be having a space program? What is the sense of having a space program? What is the sense of landing a satellite, something on the moon? And no one really knows whether it landed on the moon or not, or it crashed on the moon, because Indian government then does not want to tell you the full details.
Okay, that's a good argument.
The little animation they showed of the moon landing was a little sketchy, I have to say.
It was very sketchy. It was very sketchy. They did not show you the full thing that happened on moon.
So is it the same with the Pakistanis and the Bangladeshis? They're the same genetic background, basically, but they're Muslim as opposed to mostly Hindu. How about that?
Well, so the Indian IQ is 77 and the Pakistani IQ is 80. So you really have a slight improvement in IQ as you go westwards. But also then remember that this is the closer you start getting to Europe, the IQ continues to improve. As you go to Persia, as you go to Arabs, and as you go to eastern part of Europe, the IQ continues to improve. So the people who came from Turkey and Europe first came to Pakistan. Many people intermingled with local population. And so the IQ of Pakistan is clearly higher than that of India. Now, Pakistan is a country that we all look down at today. But Doug, over the last 76 years, except for the last decade or so, Pakistan's economy has done better than that of India's. Now, most people forget that because they want to, there's a media puts into place a certain way of thinking. But Pakistan has done much better than India over the last 76 years, despite the fact that Pakistan has to defend itself against a much bigger enemy. So they have a much bigger military budget, but despite that, that country has done much better. And my guess is that it will actually eventually do better than India because India is a complete chaos. There's no unifying force in that country, in India.
The chances of a war between India and Pakistan, because it appears that the Hindus and the Muslims are always at each other's throat. At least this is the perception here in the West.
They don't want a war. If they have a war, they will destroy themselves. And I use that word purposely. Most of these people die in friendly fire. So when India had this adventure into Pakistan in which they killed a tree, I don't know if you remember it, a few years back, they sent a plane into Pakistan. They claimed to have killed 400 terrorists or something inside Pakistan. But all they achieved was actually killing a tree. And they lost 2 planes in the process, and they killed their own 26 soldiers by shooting a missile on an Indian helicopter. So, and if you go back to the history of fighting, because they are so disorganized, there's a lot of friendly fire accidents. Now, that is the case not just with India, that's the case with Pakistan as well. Unfortunately for India, Pakistan gets a lot of help from China. So if there's ever a war between India and Pakistan, it will actually be a war between India and China. And my guess is that China will walk all over India in no time. If you go to China, anyone who goes to China realizes that Chinese are disciplined people. They follow whatever they are told to follow. Indian armed forces are not really that capable. So and the same thing happened in 1962 war between India and China. China was able to walk into India as much as they wanted to unmolested. So India doesn't really want a war because it will lose within 24 hours. But moreover, China doesn't want a war because they don't want 1.5 billion refugees knocking the gates of China.
Well, the British conquered India, basically, which was many, many different states, and it put them together. What are the chances that India is going to remain one country as opposed to break up into different linguistic groups or whatever?
Oh, it will break up. It will break up. It has already broken up, Doug. It's a very dysfunctional country. Nothing works in that country. They fight with each other all the time. It's not really a single country. It's a very brittle structure. The only reason it is there, it is in places because the neighbors don't want to break it up either. China doesn't want to break it up. So is the case with Pakistan and Bangladesh. They are very fragile countries and they will break up very quickly if you push them slightly. But no one wants to break up countries that comprise of 1 out of 5 people on the planet. This will be disastrous for the planet. So you want this dead mass to continue to stay together, seemingly together, as long as you could.
Of course, we could argue that with most places, the best people emigrate to places where they can improve themselves, where opportunity lies. So you think it's true that we're getting the best Indians in the United States and Canada?
Until I would say 5 years back, you were getting among the best Indians. And that's why the reputation of Indians wasn't all that bad. But now you are starting to get an average Indian who is crossing over from Mexico. So is the case in Canada. And so now that you are starting to experience an average Indian, the reputation of Indians have fallen off the cliff. Um, now, so, but despite that, the very best Indians are certainly leaving the country. The richest first people are leaving the country. Uh, Dubai is packed with Indians. About 80% of people in Dubai are either Indians or Pakistanis. A lot of money of India is leaving for Singapore, continues to leave Singapore for Singapore. And these are rich people taking out a lot of their money. So there is a massive amount of brain drain happening in the country because of this vicious cycle that the country is on.
Yeah, one thing I've noticed in Canada in particular, you've got about 40 million people in Canada, and I think the numbers are that there are about 1.5 million immigrants to Canada every year. That's a very large number as a proportion of the population, and the overwhelming majority of them are Indians. And I notice in Canada that the Indians all stay together in the same part of town. What do you think the consequences of that are going to be as far as Canada is concerned? Forget about the US.
So I know, Doug, you haven't been back to Vancouver for 5 years or so, if I'm not incorrect.
That's true.
If you go to Vancouver, and I hope you come to my seminar in Vancouver soon, if you walk around downtown, it looks like an Indian city. You will 50% or more people on the street in Vancouver are Indians today. So a massive number of Indians have come. Most of them are there because they want to leave India. Their parents are rich. They send their children to these useless colleges for education, for so-called education. And I've been to those colleges. They are packed with Indians who don't speak any English, who don't have any interest in anything except to stay on in Canada for a few years so that they can become permanent residents. They have no skills to offer to Canada, and they stick together because they have no competencies and skills and interest to mix with people from outside their own community. And then on top of that, Canada has hosted these Khalistani Sikhs for a very long time, which has been disastrous for Canada. They create ruckus in Canada, and increasingly they create problems in Canada. They were the people who blew up a plane over Scotland, an Air India plane. I think it was about 20, 30 years back. So this Khalistan movement is gaining pace, and I think that is also creating a lot of racism in Canada. And I would say quite rightly, because people are just sick and tired of these immigrants creating trouble in Canada. So you know, last year, I think last year, there was a fight between Eritrean groups in Edmonton, Toronto, and Calgary. Now, did you even know that they were Eritreans in Canada? But now, not only they are there, they have two different groups who would fight with each other. So that's the kind of immigrants Canada has brought in.
Well, in the case of Canada, and in fact, throughout the West, it seems to me that we're drawing in the worst kind of people from everywhere because they immediately go on welfare. In other words, in the 19th century, when Europeans were immigrating to the US and Canada, they came over penniless, but nobody gave them anything. There was no free medical, free food, free places to stay. They had to make it 100% on their own. And they knew that when they were coming over. So you tended to get the best opportunity-seeking people. But today, these governments pay all these people basically to come, which encourages the worst kind of people to come. It seems to me, forget about these H1B visas. The only way you can solve the problem is by cutting off all welfare of all types, 100%. I mean, otherwise, what's the solution? Is Canada basically going to turn into a new Hindustan? or for that matter,
It,
Pakistan.
it will turn into a new Hindustan. There is no way out of it, Doug, because if you look at the population demographics of Canada, close to 45% of Canadians are first and second generation Canadians, first and second generation immigrants, and 90% of them have come from third world countries. So it will be worse than Hindustan because it will be a mixture of many different kind of Hindustans, Pakistans, Eritreans, Somalians. So this is the future of Canada is horrible.
Yeah, yeah. The best case for Canada might be that these provinces break off from Canada, and then maybe an individual province, like Alberta, for instance, has a more intelligent policy. You think
Not
so?
really. No, not really, Doug. Again, you haven't been back to Canada for a while.
No, I
If you
haven't.
go
No,
to
it's true.
if you go to so every single urban area in Canada is now minimum 70% people of people of 70% of immigrants. If you go to Calgary, again, more than 50%, or I would say even 70% people on the streets are either from India or from Africa. So Calgary, Alberta isn't what you think it is. It is, and these people have gone all over in Canada in urban areas. But now, even if you go to smaller places, you will see immigrants because there are so many of them all over the country.
Well, what do these people do? Are they producing anything? Are they creating any wealth, or are they all basically on welfare these days?
I have no clue, but they are, I think the most competent position you see there is that of 7-Eleven, at least visually. Now, of course, there are a lot of educated people are coming as well. And again, the best brains from India are leaving India. But then for every best brain leaving the country, there are 100 more of all kinds of people leaving the country as well. Because it's so cheap to now move from anywhere to anywhere. Plane tickets are cheap, moving is cheap, and so people are doing that. I Vancouver has become very crime prone over the last few years. It has also become dirty. And now in downtown, and I'm downtown area, the Coal Harbor area, which was used to be a very classy area at one point of time, you now have tens of homeless people. So things have degraded quite a bit in Canada.
Hey, Doug, I got to tell you, I saw a new term to describe a lot of the immigrants or a certain class of immigrants. It's called gimmigrants. Gimme and immigrant smashed together. So people that are coming for the goodies, gimmigrant.
I can understand how it's going to be very hard to turn this around, because these immigrants or gimmigrants or migrants, if you wish, they concentrate in cities, and the culture of a country is generally set by the cities. That's where the politics is manufactured, for one thing, and the politics controls the laws, and the laws will favor these deleterious things. Can this trend be turned around, Jayant, or are we just in a death spiral?
I think you are in a death spiral now, and that's why I'm increasingly looking at East Asia, Doug. I think the Western society is at its last stage, pretty much. America has become, if you look at demographics of America, America will be a third world people majority country within the next 2 decades. And you see the influence of the voting of the third world people in American elections already. Trump did not want immigration 10 years back. Now he's open to it because in the last 8 years, about 10, 15 million new people have become citizens of the US, and most of them are from the third world. And they want immigration to continue, these people. So unfortunately, I don't see a way to turn this around. My fear is, and I think that is the only way out for the Western society, which is that there will be a civil war at some point of time in which all these Muslims, Hindus, Sikhs, all these people who fight with each other will come together and fight with ethnic Europeans, because a time will come when ethnic Europeans will wake up to what's happening. Now they are not waking up. So this recent H1B thing is just a spark or just a small event. I don't think this will last too long. But at one point of time, the larger section of Europeans will wake up to what's happening, and that will be chaotic, because they are the people who have the guns and they are the people who can shoot properly. And it will be not a good civil war for the non-white people.
You know, this H1B thing, I think you're right. It probably just end up being a blip because they're Trump supporters ultimately, and they still are going to support their guy. But I think it showed as clear as I've ever seen that dividing line you're talking about, because it wasn't, this nativism speaking, the people that are, these were people who were thoughtful, saw the long-term implications of it, could recognize the real harm that it causes and the real consequences of it. And I don't know, the dividing line was so stark that people were willing to go against Elon Musk and even Trump a bit. They're like hedging with Trump still holding out hope that he's their guy. But for people to turn so quickly on Elon Musk, I thought was a sign.
Yeah, I agree, Matt. And I think people were getting tired of Indians over the last few years, their arrogance and their lack of gratitude, because these people beg for American visa when they are in India. Once they are on American shore, they start becoming very arrogant and very nationalistic. From Indian perspective, they become very proud of their religion. And Americans were getting tired of all that. And Vivek's tweet, I think, was a catalyst which brought all these people together, and they blew off. They just could handle it no more. And Vivek's tweet showed how the fact that he was romanticizing Indians and Hinduism. He can as well go back to India if he really thinks Hinduism is all that great and India is all that great. Why should he not return back to India? Because he's actually eligible to go back to India. He can actually get Indian passport right away, almost right away. It's a 6-week process, and you don't even have to pay bribe for that. So it's an easy, quick process, and so he can go back. But and this is the problem with Indians across the board. Once they are in the US, they start romanticizing India, and this is really something that has tired people of the US.
Mm.
Yeah,
Well, I mean,
it's, go ahead, Matt.
I was just going to say with Vivek, it brought up him saying this, focus his attention on him, which, conservatives basically have gone, he's a smart guy. He's really good at arguing the point of view. But then, they start more paying attention to his background. Like, how did this guy make his money? It turns out he made his money through basically these biotech frauds his mom and his brother are involved with. It's like, at least that's the take I have on it, and that's what other people online have. I'm not sure. My impression.
Yeah, I think he's a smart guy. He's probably perfectly fine as an average immigrant. I mean, America probably should improve its IQ by having people like Vivek, but he does not belong to higher offices. He's going to screw things up, unfortunately.
Mm.
Well, it is interesting that throughout the Western world, we've seen this in Scotland, England, certainly in the US and Canada, a lot of high government officials and high corporate officials are now of Indian descent. And this is a very new phenomenon, something we've only seen in the last 5 or 10 years at most. So there really is a wave of Indians washing over the West. And, as an ANCAP, as a libertarian, I've always said, and in my personal life, I act this way, I accept people or not based upon their individual character. I think that's the only way you can judge. But at the same time, if you import a lot of people of an alien culture, it'll change the culture of the country. And since Western culture, to me, is the only culture that's worth a damn in the world. I mean, yeah, I like as far as India is concerned, yeah, I love curries and I like yoga. Great. I don't know what else India has brought to the party. When it comes to China, I love Mugu Gai Pan and Taoism and Kung Fu. There are a few other things, but actually everything good in the world has come from Western civilization. And I'm afraid it's being washed away. And I don't like it personally. I personally like Western civilization much more than any other.
Yeah, I would go as far as saying that Western civilization is the only has been the only civilization. It's the only they have been the only people who brought human beings out of animal kingdom. Um, the the people of the third world, and again, I mentioned this earlier that people of India are amoral people and they hold no virtues. Um, that pretty much also means that they are animalistic in their conduct. The reason they like to be in politics is because they like to run lives of other people. They absolutely love it. You give a stick to an Indian and he will certainly use it.
Yeah, the other thing about politics is that you don't have to do anything except ingratiate yourself to other people. You don't have to produce anything at all, but you can make a lot of money. So, of course, the worst kind of people are drawn to politics. You get lots of rewards, but you don't have to produce anything. It's actually quite criminal, the mentality of people that get into politics.
And all these people who get the Indians and Indians who get elected get voted into power from ghettos. So the Canadian foreign minister, the Harbachan Singh, I think, who was the defense minister, he was elected from South Vancouver, which is a Sikh majority part of southern Vancouver. And similarly, I look at all these people, Indians getting elected, and they all get elected from areas where whites and East Asian are in minority. And these people vote on tribal basis. And that is unfortunately the problem, that these people stay tribal even after they have arrived in the US.
I'm afraid that you're right. And ultimately, it's going to turn into a civil war because the society is becoming more and more politicized, and birds of a feather are flocking together, and they're all competing for freebies from the same pie. So, how do you see things evolving over the next 5 or 10 or 15 or 20 years? If we look at Canada or the US, let's say a generation from now, 20 years from now, what do you think is likely to happen? I mean, write some science fiction for me, if you would.
Doug, people of North European ethnicity are the only people who rise above their ethnicity. They look at other people based on the value and skills the other person has. Indians and Africans don't think that way. They prefer to be with their own kinds because they are tribal people. And again, going back to what we talked about earlier, it's a race issue, it's an IQ issue, it's a genetic issue. My view is that Indians are not going to learn from what's happening right now. They are going to dig in their heels deeper because they think that being arrogant is a way to fight back. So they will piss off more and more Americans with time. And Americans are going to become increasingly aware of what these immigrants mean for the US. My guess is that the next 4 years hopefully will be a slight improvement over what's been happening for the last 4 years. However, because of demographics, the popular vote and electoral college vote will go in the favor of Democratic Party. There's no way out of it. Since 1988, only twice American popular vote has gone into the hands of Republican. One in this case when Trump got elected this time, but also when George Bush got elected the second time. But apart from that, popular vote in the US has always gone to the Democratic Party since 1988. That's been the influence of the people of third world countries in American elections. And I think this is the last 4 years, because now demographically, America will become a third world uh, uh, voting pattern country eventually, because not just popular vote, but also electoral college will go into the hands of Democratic Party. I think US will become increasingly dysfunctional. It will become increasingly third world like. I think just the whole of the Western society will fall apart without the US, because the US is the spine of the Western world. So I'm very negative about the future of the Western world, despite the fact that it's the Western civilization that I think has the highest value of all the societies in the world. But this is on its way out.
I'm forced to agree with you because against my will, because even in this last election where the Trumpers won, if you look at the candidates the Democrats put up, Kamala and whoever that other bozo was, I mean, these were about the worst possible people that you could imagine that were elected. And actually, the same thing was true when Biden was elected 4 years ago. And half of the country, more or less, votes for these basically criminal, degraded personalities. So how is it going to get better, especially based upon the trends that you've indicated? The people running for office are clearly becoming worse and more degraded, and the demographic trends are worse. It's this can't end well.
Yeah, and also, Doug, Trump got fewer votes from ethnic European people this time. He won because of Latino and Black male votes. And those people, Latinos and Blacks, did not vote for Trump to save the Western civilization. They voted for him for a reason different from saving the Western civilization. They voted for him because they did not want Kamala Harris. She is a woman, and inflation had hurt these people very badly. So these are reasons different from saving Western civilization. A lot of right-wing people think that Trump got voted into power because now people are waking up to save the Western society. But that isn't happening. Fewer white people voted for him, which means that people of European ethnicity continue to become leftist and woke for now. And I think this will continue. The trend is in that favor.
Do you think Trump will follow through on at least the implication that he's going to get rid of the illegal immigration? He's going to send people back. He's going to deport people. He's going to actually change anything that's been going on in that regard?
Well, I wouldn't be surprised if he's able to send back a few million people, but many million people walk into America every year. So how many, a million is not, a few million is only noise in all the illegal people who are in the country. But it's not just the illegal people, it's the legal people who are a problem for the US. I actually don't. So, Matt, if you go to any mid-sized city in India, there are buildings, high-rise buildings with boards advertising to get your application done for immigration to Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and the US. They will create any kind of document you want for immigration. They will create fake degrees for you, fake resumes for you. They will even interview for you on video by lip syncing. And this is very common. This has been known to the American IT society for a long time, that when you interview an Indian on internet, you might be talking to a different person than talking verbally to a different person, because the person facing you might be just lip syncing. So I don't feel, when people say that send illegal people back. But what about the legal people? They are not necessarily much different from illegal people. And in fact, I would say that people who are crossing over from Mexico are entrepreneurial enough to take that path, whereas people who fly in through legal immigration just sit in their cities and cook up documents.
Yeah, and this is something that during the campaign, even I was kind of warning people about, because Trump would say, we are going to stop illegal immigration, but we need more legal immigration. I mean, so it's why do you think why do you think the powers that be, the people that are running things, really are so adamant in supporting this illegal immigration? And I mean, given the fact you said these IT guys aren't that great, they create a lot of tech debt, they call it, it's expensive. It isn't the best solution anyway. Why is everybody seemingly in favor of flooding the country with these people?
I think it's corporations. Companies like cheap labor, they like cheap delivery people. Amazon wants cheap delivery people. I'm hearing that even in Poland now, there are a lot of Indians delivering Amazon packets. So companies love cheap employees, and they want, through their lobbying efforts in Washington, they enable that immigration to happen. Now, that's always a short-term solution because, once they are in, they rise up in life, they make more money. So you have to keep bringing in new immigrants, but companies love those. And I think that this is where I quite like Xi Jinping, who went against Jack Ma when Jack Ma was trying to influence the Chinese government. Xi Jinping said, hey, it's not your job to influence the governance. Your job is to run business. And I think that's what the US should do, it should discourage all these lobbying that happens.
So it is what all the people on the right say. And after all, it's just a matter of suppressing US wages. Like, that's what it's all about.
I think that's what it is. And I think that once you reduce immigration, the wages of the lower class section of your society rises quite nicely. If you look at Switzerland and Iceland, their wages are, the people at the lower class spectrum of the society make decent wages. But unfortunately, lower class in America does not understand it because they get bribed through the welfare system into accepting immigrants. But immigrants harm the lower class the most.
Maybe the only way out of this is through technology. You're not going to need more labor if robots actually can do things that stupid people, basic people can do. And it seems to me that within a generation or 10 years probably, we'll have bipedal, highly intelligent robots like friendly Terminators, hopefully, if you would. And you're not going to need people doing dog work type of tasks.
Well,
if the governments go bankrupt, which they're all going bankrupt, they'll have to delete a great deal of welfare, which is drawing these people. So I always look at the bright side, though.
on the white collar side, Doug, it'll happen way sooner than that because these AI tools are getting very good, very fast. And a lot of these, the cheap labor IT workers that they're bringing in, honestly, they're going to be completely unnecessary in a short period of time.
And I think if I remember it right, close to 500,000 people in the IT sector have been laid off in the last couple of years. Google has laid off the whole of, I've lived in San Francisco for many years. Hundreds of thousands of people have been laid off. So that should raise a question. Why do we need more people when the people already in the US are desperately looking for jobs?
Yeah, and it's interesting because it's going to create this scenario, I think, where you've got, the IT jobs that they're bringing in these H1B people on are going to go away. So, honestly, even if they were available for Americans would be replaced by them in short order as well. This change is so massive and it's coming so fast. I don't think people can fully grasp it yet.
This all comes back to government welfare, frankly. Government welfare supports the people that least deserve support and draws in people of the kind that you don't want. So I look forward to the bankruptcy of the US and Canadian governments, although we have the same problem in England and New Zealand and Australia. All of the Anglo countries have exactly the same problem that the US and Canada do.
Well, in the United Kingdom, you would go to prison for having a conversation that we are having. UK has got degraded far faster than any other Western country.
Yeah.
Hmm.
But it's
Well,
a
I'm
sign.
reasonably, listen, for me, it was between living in Asia, East Asia, or South America. So here I am in South America. It's pretty good. But I guess we've all kind of made the same decision with modifications. We all see the same problem.
Yeah, I'm certainly looking very closely at East Asia, Doug. I go to China and Japan quite often. Last time I was in Gwangju just about a month back, and my room service was a robot. Server was a robot. So
Oh.
things are changing very rapidly in East Asia. I think their demographic issue is being cared for by AI and robots. So they are not letting new citizens in from outside their countries. They want to stay homogeneous. Even if they allow outsiders in, they never give their citizenship to outsiders. And I think that's something that the Western society should have done as well. Even if they let outside workers come in, they should not have given away citizenships.
What do you think? What should the average American do? I mean, in this trend that you see coming, this demographic cliff that is kind of unavoidable in the electoral system, you say eventually a civil war could likely come out of it as the white Americans start to recognize what's actually going on. But what should someone do? How should people?
Yeah, Matt, I don't even understand the mind of an average American because, if I think of a white person trying to become a citizen of India and trying to rise through political hierarchy, it is virtually impossible. People will kick him out right away. No one will accept him. If a black guy does it, it will be even worse. So, and it will be the same elsewhere in the world as well. So why is it that Americans are so open-minded? And I admire that open-mindedness. I think it's an amazing quality that Americans have. But sometimes you can be too compassionate and too tolerant and too accepting.
It's true. It's like Lenin said, the capitalists will sell us the rope that we will use to hang them. And this is a variation on that theme, actually.
Yeah.
It's kind of hopeless, though, if you think about it that way. Then, obviously we got out, we left, seeing the trends, the government trends, the demographic trends, the crime trends. I guess a lot of those, they're probably all related, actually. But, I think it's probably a bridge too far for most people to imagine that that's the right answer, to totally abandon the place that they grew up in, the place that once was something worthy.
Yeah, and I'm afraid a lot of people think that, well, now that Trump's in office and then J.D. Vance will be the next president for 8 years, whoever the hell J.D. Vance may be, I don't even know what he's really like. But they're deluding themselves for the reasons that we've been talking about, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I completely agree. I don't see a good future of the US. It's a great country. I still love it. I think it's still the best country on the planet, but the future will deteriorate very rapidly over the next 1 decade or so.
Well, I have to ask you, because J.D. Vance came up, what effect, this white guy marries into an Indian family, what effect over time, I know we're speculating completely because none of us know him, but what effect might that have on his thinking and his drives and motivations?
Well, I think choosing an Indian woman who is a practicing Hindu already tells you something about his thinking. And I think all these three people, Tulsi, wife Usha, and Vivek, will be pro-Indian, and they will want to romanticize Hinduism within the Christian population. And unfortunately, and I disagree with one thing on with Doug. Doug was saying nice things about yoga. Yoga is nothing but stretching exercises, which are actually mostly imports from the Western society, given a tag of yoga. But also, this is a subliminal way to destroy your Christianity into a pagan religion. And Christianity and Islam have always been against paganism. They have always been against polytheism. And there is actually a problem with polytheism. And the problem is the moment you have polytheism, you have many gods. So you can pick and choose your god depending on the circumstances. That's the mindset of pagan and polytheistic people. And I have thought and studied a lot about it. And I think this is why they hated paganism. And this is why they always say that I'm the only god and there's no other god except me. Because if you don't accept that, you don't have objectivity. The moment you have more than one god, you are almost like multi-universe in your mind. And I think the influence of Hinduism on Christianity will be very corrosive. Unfortunately, unlike Islam, which is very blunt about its intentions, Hinduism is will weaken it from inside very slowly. It will have this slow corrosive effect as it has had on the Western coast. You have all these nice resorts and retreats in California and in the west coast of Canada, but they all generate woke ultra leftists who have no connection with life, who are super positive, who only want to think positive because they are so irrational that they don't want to look at the reality the way it is. So this is creating a different kind of hallucination in the minds of people. People haven't really understood the harm they will have because of importing a foreign religion.
You mentioned Tulsi Gabbard and your three people a second ago. I think a lot of people don't know what her background is. Would you mind sharing that with people?
So Tulsi is an American. I think she is from Hawaii, but her parents are followers of Hare Krishna. Now, Hare Krishna is a, or at least seen as a cult movement. And is so much is it seen as a cult movement that it is not acceptable to Indians. Or until recently, it wasn't acceptable to them. So she is a Hindu. She's a practicing Hindu. But again, as I said, polytheism results into this very morally relativistic way of thinking, or I would say amoral thinking, in which you are not even moral versus immoral. You just can't differentiate between good and bad. You are just lost in nothing.
Mm. Very interesting, because she's a kind of a darling of the right at this point now as well.
And I like her, I mean, I like Vivek as well, and I like her as well. But then the moment I hear these things, I feel fidgety about it. But also, Tulsi has a very good opinion of Modi, who is a Hindu fanatic. Tulsi apparently has had good relationship with the Hindu fanatic organizations in the US. So unfortunately, the problem is that once you belong to a certain religion, the fanatics of that religion no longer look fanatic to you.
Mm.
And Hindus are relishing the fact that these three Hindus are in positions of power. And that will have a bad consequence on American future.
Well, and the other thing about Tulsi is she's personally attractive. She's well-spoken. Seems like a nice person, but her politics, she never talks about her domestic views. And of course, she would just be a standard left-wing Democrat. but she's very smart in just talking about things that will appeal to the right wing. But I'm sure her domestic policy views are very leftist, because that's her whole history.
Anyone who believes in a pagan polytheistic religion is going to be very flimsy in his decision making. Again, because they get infused with this moral relativism. And I have been there, Doug. So I know I have crossed that path. I know what it means to be on that side. I think they. Um, America should have stayed Christian. It should have stayed stuck to its Christian values. Now, I know you are an atheist and I'm an atheist, but it is very important to have at least the virtues of that Christianity has historically imparted to the Western society.
Of course, that's one of the things that I hold against Christianity, is that it largely washed away the Roman virtues, the classical virtues, and replace them with kind of namby-pamby virtues. But, well,
Still better than none.
I guess
that's right.
You gotta believe in something to get you through the night.
Yeah,
So
and I grew up. Yeah, and I grew up in a society, Doug, where there are no values, no virtues, no morality. Everyone is interested in money and sex, and that those are the only two drivers on the seat there. So something is better than nothing, and I think I have only seen Christianity. I haven't seen Roman virtues in practice, but what I have seen is a Western civilization which has been very virtuous and continues to be virtuous, but again, it is going through a suicide now.
You're right. The old virtues, even Christian virtues, are being washed away at this point. It's really rather tragic. I can't wait to see, well, I won't see, what the world looks like in 100 years, just as a intellectual experiment. Perhaps that's why a lot of, there's this bifurcation in science fiction between, a bold and wonderful future and dystopia, because it could go either way in 100 years.
Good. Hey, Jayant, I want to get your feedback or your thoughts on what people who spend too much time online, like me, see with Indian behavior online. I know we'll get some of it because of this video, and I know you are very accustomed to it because of everything you've said today. I mean, you're a heretic for coming out and saying the things that you say, or an apostate, and you get targeted like nobody. So you see this. It's like this gang up behavior that you often see. If anyone gets critical of Indians in any way, and they come out of nowhere and crush people as much as they can. What is that? What are we seeing?
Well, it's a very spineless society. This is an extremely spineless society. I think at the peak of British occupation, it was only 30,000 Britishers ruling that country of 300 million people. So it's a very sheepish people, and you can pretty much bribe absolutely everyone in that country. So not many wars actually happened in India. You could always bribe their military commander and avoid a war. What Indians do is very spineless on social media. There's no, they think that giving gang rape threats is a sign of being a warrior. And it simply does not sink into their psyche. And that these are very spineless things to do. And the reason, again, is that they are amoral people with no virtues. So they don't really understand. You can keep having a fight with them, but they won't understand that their conduct is being very dishonorable because they have no concept of honor either. So unfortunately, what you see on social media is a reflection of it. And that is why I was saying that because of what's happening with H1B issue, it isn't going to get resolved because Indians won't understand why they are having this blowback. They will continue to do more and more of what created this blowback, and they will come to a position where Americans will love to hate Indians.
So how do you handle it when, because if I expect, if I post this on X, I expect I'm going to get some shit. So I see you handle it like a champ. I'm just wondering maybe some advice for those who come under assault by the.
I'm very elitist, Matt. I will not engage with those people. I never, ever engage with them. I might retweet them to show other people a side of Indians, but I will never engage with them. And I think Western people have lost that capability. They should become elitist. In fact, that is my thinking. I think politics should become elitist as well. It should be like China or Singapore, where only meritocratic people are capable and allowed to rise up in positions of power. So I do not give any value to non-meritocratic, unskilled people and stupid people. So I will not engage with them. I think people should learn to be elitist again. But somehow for people, elitism sounds like classism and casteism. But if that's what it sounds like, so it be. I prefer to be an elitist.
Well, that word has been ruined by the left. You have all these World Economic Forum people and all these ultra-leftists that have designated themselves as being an upper caste and the elite, so that even, these people ruin perfectly good concepts and words everywhere they go. Like the word liberal was one of the first that they used, and there are many, many others. They've corrupted the language in addition to corrupting the thinking process. But you're quite correct. I agree with you. And the foundations of America, you could say America was kind of democratic, and it was. But at the same time, when America was founded, it was just the elite, the thinking people, the well-educated people, the rich people that controlled the society in its early days.
Yeah, and I think only about 5 to 7% of Americans had the right to vote those days. And that's how it should have stayed.
It's true. It was just male landowners, basically. You're quite correct. Yes, it should be that way.
That's the kind of elitist talk we need more of, apparently.
Yeah. Well, we can be ostracized, and if the algorithm on YouTube refers us to a warm body, we'll absolutely get our third strike.
Well, Indians will report you, Doug. I absolutely guarantee you they will gang up. And this is unfortunately true about Indians. They gang up. They want to, if you go to their social media accounts, you will see conversations happening in which they talk about how they would gang up and report to X about certain post. And they do that in mass so that certain accounts get suspended. I think Twitter has probably learned not to give much credence to so much of mass reporting by Indians, but that's what they do.
Well, this will be a good test for us. We'll see if we can do it. All right. Well, this is awesome, Jayant. Thank you for taking the time to come speak with us. I mean, you got to hear it from the horse's mouth, the expert on the topic. And so we're
Oh, wait, Matt, there's one more thing. I've got to recommend, I've gone to probably 7 or 8, Jayant, of your Capitalism and Morality seminars in Vancouver. I haven't for the last several years, obviously, but I urge people to attend those because you have excellent speakers, and they're very sound and enjoyable. That's one thing. And how else can they reach out to you or get your publication or whatever? Give us a commercial if you would.
So my website is jayantbhandari.com, and on that homepage is a tab called Capitalism and Morality. They can go to the link of that website and then webpage, and then the next seminar is on the 23rd of August 2025 in downtown Vancouver, Canada.
I've never attended, but I've watched a lot of the speeches that are given there, and they're world class. I mean, it's great. You get great speakers, and they're very enjoyable and very informative.
Yep,
Yeah,
totally.
Thank you, Matt. And I hope Doug can come one of these days.
Yeah, It's about time I got back to Canada and put some boots on the ground. I'm sure it'll be very depressing, except for going to the seminar, of course.
Yes, it is, and a lot of things in Vancouver have become dysfunctional because of people they have brought in, and you learn very quickly how dysfunctionality emerges once you have wrong kind of people in the society.
Mhm.
Explains a lot of what we see around us in the US, that's for sure. All right, Jayant, thank you so much. Really appreciate your time today. It means a lot to both of us, and I'm sure to our viewers as well. I know you're one of the favorite guests we've ever had on the show, so appreciate the
All
time.
right. Thank you very much, Matt. Thank you very much, Doug. Have a great
Thanks.
day.